So I'm going to go through the pen tool and some of the basics with using the pen tool. The pen tool is a pretty simple tool to start to use, but obviously it takes a bit of time to master. And there's a few things that you need to, I guess, remember as you start to use the pen tool. The pen tool basically allows you to draw shapes, illustrate objects, and essentially do a lot of the illustrating as a core tool of Adobe Illustrator. There's a lot of core functions used with the pen tool. Illustrator itself generates shapes using anchor points with the pen tool as well, so it's an easy tool to sort of start out with, but can be a little bit overwhelming as well to sort of get your head around. So I'm going to break this up into two videos, this one being kind of the basics, and then the next one going into a bit more depth of how to actually draw, because I think that's the best way to kind of learn about how to use the pen tool as well. There's a lot of shortcuts and a few like technical elements of using the pen tool with shortcuts and hotkey options, but I think holistically it's better to break it up into two videos just to learn a bit at a bit more of a relaxed pace. So when you are using the pen tool, there is 4 drop down menu options in the pen tool toolbar option here. When you do select the pen tool initially, your cursor will change to a pen. So this is basically what it means that you can use the pen tool. The pen tool by default will draw shapes, lines, that sort of thing. If you want to turn off drawing a shape with the pen tool, you basically go down here, because this is what the color selection does by default. So you basically have to turn this off, and then now we can draw lines using the pen tool. So drawing lines with the pen tool is pretty straightforward. So all you need to do is just hit left click, and you can see that we're drawing a simple line with the pen tool. And there you go, there's a shape that you've got that's been drawn by the pen tool. So it's quite a straightforward way to sort of draw objects. This line is just built off points called anchor points. So I'm just going to zoom in here to give a better demonstration. With anchor points and the pen tool, anchor points are kind of what angles or different corners of a drawn line are made up of. If I go to the direct selection tool, if you remember in the past video, this is what's going to allow me to see different elements of this line. So you can see that there are anchors at different corners of this line. So what this means is, you can just basically edit these. You can mess with them. You can adjust the handle of these anchor points. What you need to remember is when drawing lines with the pen tool, you can hold and draw to make curved objects. So you can see this is an example that I've clicked and drawn a line using the pen tool. If you want to draw curved shapes, the best way to do this using the pen tool is clicking on the pen tool and just starting. Say for example I want to draw like a circle. So I'm just going to hit here, I'm going to click and drag, and I've actually got this. This is my mouse without holding any keys. So this is what happens when you use it without any keys. And this is what happens when I hold the shift key. So it allows me to just sort of resize based off increments of 45 degrees. So that's what Illustrator allows you to do. If I want to draw a circle, you can see that the anchor point created is here, and I'm going to draw a circle which is somewhat accurate. You can see that the handles allow me to dictate the curvature. So I'm just going to use the guides as a way to do this. And then when you do close an object with the pen tool, you can see that the cursor has changed to a closed circle, which means I'm going to close the shape. And there you go. There's a closed shape using the pen tool. So you can see that I'm selecting off the pen tool using the selection tool. And then I can actually go into this. You can see that there's no fill. So I can't select it from the middle, but it's got a stroke, it's a shape. I can color this white, I can color this yellow, and it's an actual shape now. When drawing with the pen tool, say for example I want to draw a, maybe just a basic sky. So I'm going to draw a triangle. So I'm going to click first, hold shift, click, click, and click. That's all holding the shift key as well. So I'm going to deselect with the selection tool, draw another triangle. So I'm going to click, click here. Don't worry about drawing shapes over other objects. Illustrator allows you to do that. Click and then hold shift and click and close that loop. I'm just going to make this a bit smaller. I'm going to hold shift and resize that proportionally. And just for good luck, I'm just going to maybe bring this sun into the background, for example, and just resize it, making it a bit more nicer. And then for good luck, I'm just going to make a background. So I'm holding shift and I'm drawing a rectangle. And this way I am going to move this back, sorry, and then just make it like a orange. Okay. So as an example, that was just a basic way to sort of draw shapes with the pen tool. But the one thing I want to explain is anchor points. So when you do draw shapes, shapes that you draw using the pen tool are built using anchor points. So if I hover over back onto the pen tool, you can see there's an anchor point here and an anchor point here where that corner is, and so on. Oops. Removing an anchor point, for example, let's just say I'm not happy with maybe this second mountain in front, and I want to maybe just get rid of it, for example. I can remove these anchor points and edit these anchor points using the anchor point tool or the direct selection tool. But I'm just going to show you the anchor point tool because this is what shapes are made of in Illustrator. You can see that the cursor has changed and then the anchor point has been activated. If I click onto that using left click, I can actually deactivate the anchor and allow myself to sort of edit using the handles. So say for example I wanted this to be a rounded mountain or just get rid of it completely. I can actually hold shift and sort of mess around with this in a way and turn this into maybe like a nice hill. Hopefully that makes a bit of sense. I encourage you to also experiment a bit with holding shift and actually moving anchor points with the anchor point tool. If you're unhappy with just the positioning, I would say use the direct selection tool, which you can move and edit these points as you wish. Say for example we've made a shape that has for example 4 sides. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and we're going to close that. Say it's like a rock. We want to place this in our drawing, but we don't want this additional side. We just want it like a three-sided rock. We can remove that by using the delete anchor point tool and add more points with the add anchor point tool, but I'll just show you with the delete. Basically, you just hover over, you'll see that the pen tool changes to a minus, and then we can actually just delete that anchor point, and then there you go. If you want to re-add an anchor point, just go back to add anchor point tool. You can see that it's changed to a plus. I'm just going to left click here. It's added an anchor point which is available for us to actually edit using the direct selection tool. If you want to make this like a curved corner, there's different ways that you can do this using the direct selection tool, or you can use the pen tool, the anchor point tool to edit the anchors. When messing around with anchor points, you will see that there are these two lines that pop out from the side. These are called anchors, or handles, I'd say. These handles are the way that you can actually edit both sides of the anchor point. If you want to edit both of these at the same time, I recommend holding Shift to keep them in line at different angles, or just dragging and holding and pulling this and editing it as you wish. Using the curve tool, where are we? Yes. So, yeah, I know that's a pretty obvious one. If you are drawing shapes, say for example, like a very basic curved object, or an object that's purely based off curves, the curve tool is, I guess, an easy way to do that, but it's just purely based off curves. So I'll just show you how to use it. You see the curves has changed. So I'm just going to click here, click here. And you can see when I've just done a simple line, you can see the preview of Adobe Illustrator allows you to show you where you can draw this. Say for example, I want to draw another sun, but I want it to be a bit more nicely rounded, for example. It's probably not the best way to do it, but I'll click here, maybe I'll click here, and then sort of loop it and close it. This way I can get a bit more of a smoother object using the curvature tool. And then when you deselect, you've got basically a fully edited solid object with a fill in it. I'll change the color because it's hurting my eyes. Let's go with the yellow. So you can see that as an example. This basically leads us into drawing basic shapes with the pen tool. So if we go back to the pen tool, we're just going to draw a basic shape as an example. Once again, so say for example you want to draw maybe like an eyelid or an eye. So we want to make like an oval shaped object with a circle in the middle. Okay, it's a bit of a basic one, but I'll try and do this as accurate as possible. So the way that you do this, you would go click here with the pen tool, would probably add an anchor point at the top here. I'll click and drag that out using the hold shift key. So I'm holding shift again to sort of keep that equal, and I'm dragging while I'm holding shift. If I let go of shift, it's gonna transition into freeform. So I'll hold shift, drag that out. I'll just kind of estimate and use the guides as Illustrator allows me. We can edit this later using the direct selection tool. And then I'll go back here and drag that out. It's pretty crappy eyelid. And then close the shape here. I don't want to drag that out because I want to keep the sharpness of these edges here. You can change this in a separate option here, which is converting your anchor points to smooth. But in this instance, I'm just going to leave these to sharp. If I want to edit this, I'm going to zoom in. use the direct selection tool and move these anchors around so I get a nice even eyelid. Okay. So say for example I want to draw a nice rounded circle, and the circle inside is going to be the iris of the eye. I'm going to draw this using the pen tool again just to demonstrate. So let's say I just want a nice straight circle. I'm just going to click here. I'm going to click diagonally here, diagonally here. I'm just using the guides as a bit of a guide, and then close that here. It's not perfect, but I'm going to show you guys how to edit this. I'm going to go back to the direct selection tool. I would say as someone that uses Illustrator on a regular basis, this is probably the best and the quickest way to do this. But feel free to experiment again with the anchor point tools. Maybe I'll try using it this way. Yeah, it's probably a bit better to do it this way. It's not going to be perfect. Okay, just sort of smooth that out. It's not perfect, but I'll do. And I'll move, you can see I'm using a combination of these two tools to sort of move these objects around. It's not amazing, but I think that will do. If you want to alleviate this sort of headache, you can obviously use the ellipse tool, which will give you a nice rounded circle. But just an example. You can also see that Illustrator, if you actually have a look, Illustrator actually uses and draws its shapes using the pen tool and using anchors as well. If I go to the anchor point tool, you can see this is the way that Illustrator does it as well. So it's a cool way to know how these things work from the inside out. So say for example I actually like the way that this is done, but we're just going to use a hand-drawn one. I'm going to move this here and hold shift and just kind of drag this out and move this accordingly. You can probably use this just to make the actual middle of the eye. Yeah, I know that looks kind of weird, but there you go. I know that looks kind of strange, but I guess it's a good demonstration of how to use the pen tool to your liking. There's probably a better way to maybe explain how to remove and add anchor points, but again, just as a refresher, I'll just draw a simple line. So using the pen tool again, say for example I just want to draw like a simple curved object for a logo, for example. So I'm just going to hit here, curve things out. I can maybe just use the shift key. This is really basic, but I'm going to draw this out and make it very simple. No, that's kind of crappy. Let me delete it. I'll do something very simple. Maybe let's just think about doing a basic mountain range. And turn this into like a logo. Okay. And then we'll use the setting sun in the background. Yeah. And then encapsulate that. We'll use the pen tool just to make it a bit more easier. It's not perfect, but there you go. When you do create objects with the pen tool and say you don't want sharp edges, there is a way they can actually make these a bit more rounded. This is probably a bit more in-depth, but if you go to stroke and you hit rounded cap, it should allow you to smooth these things out. Oh, sorry, corner. There you go. not cap. Cap will be the end object of a stroke, for example, that. So that's a cap. So this is the way that you can edit that. So hopefully that makes sense. Also, one more thing, when you are drawing using the shapes, for example, if you don't want this sharp V, say you wanted a rounded V here, I'd say it's using the anchor point tool to actually edit and hold shift, and you can actually edit this as you wish. I'm holding shift to keep this in line, but you can do that as you wish, and then you can click back to actually reset that. So I just undid that with Control Z or Apple Z, Command Z. So yeah, hopefully that makes a bit of sense. In the next video, I'm going to go through a bit more of drawing the shapes and editing basic shapes to make it a bit more easier in context. So yeah, let me know what you think of this tutorial and if you learned something.